Well, hello everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're very excited about today's webinar because we have a great partner that's going to be joining us in the delivery. Before we get started, just want to say a big thank you to everyone for taking some time out of their day to listen to another Huawei webinar. We're just pleased that you're taking the time with us, and we're going to make it very exciting for you. As always, we're going to give everybody who spends the full time $10 Starbucks gift card for participating, so enjoy a cup of coffee on us. We definitely want to keep the questions flowing today. There is a Q&A panel in your GoToWebinar interface. Type your questions in as we go along, and we'll address those at the end as best we can. Also, as we always like to do, we're going to have 3 polling questions spread throughout the presentation. So when it comes time for a polling question, we really appreciate your ability to participate in the polls, and we'll share the results with you. And then finally, we will be recording this session, and it will be placed on the Huawei website within just a couple of days after the conclusion of the webinar. So at this point, we're going to have 2 speakers. The first is going to be Mike Piero, who's a storage systems engineer with Huawei, and he's going to go over a little bit about the Huawei technology that's involved in this solution. And then after Mike is done, we're going to have Noam Shendar, who's the VP of Business Development at Zadara, talk a bit about the storage as a service solution and what's involved with it. So that's going to be the overview. So at this point, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Mike to talk about the first section. Mike, take it away.
Thanks, Nick, for the introduction, and thanks everyone for joining us here today on this Thursday afternoon or late morning, wherever you may be. My name, as Nick said, is Mike Piero. I'm a systems engineer with Huawei, and today's presentation is going to cover the partnership between Huawei and Zadara, and specifically the Zadara Storage VPSA, or Virtual Private Storage Array, and how that solution allows us to start getting into the SaaS, or storage as a service space. Huawei's got a 2.5-year relationship with Zadara in this solution, and we're very proud to have them as such a great partner, and we've got a great partnership with them going forward. So before we get into the solution itself, let's just take a quick look and make sure you understand who Huawei is. Huawei Corporation is very large. It's an almost $40 billion company serving approximately 1/3 of the world's population with deployments in over 140 countries worldwide. Huawei is truly an engineering company with almost a half of its 150,000 employees dedicated to research and development. In fact, in the carrier space, 45 of the world's top 50 telecom operators are using Huawei gear. So we're kind of like the company that comes from the top down with very, hardened solutions, solutions that have been tried and tested in the, most demanding spaces, and we take that approach to the enterprise space. So Huawei's North American arm is called Huawei Enterprise, and while our first North American regional office was established in Plano, Texas in 2001, our headquarters today are in Cupertino, California. We've also got field offices all throughout the country, and I'm actually part of that group, and I'm out of New York. In case you haven't noticed my my New York twang by this point, we've got many offices in Chicago, in Dallas, and the West Coast, and sprinkled all throughout the country. So we've got some great coverage across the U.S. here. So now that you have an idea of the size and breadth of the company, let's take a look at Huawei's enterprise product portfolio. Okay, it's really a very high-level snapshot here of our full enterprise solution sets, covering unified communications with our telepresence and video conferencing capabilities, campus and branch with enterprise networking and wireless products, and our data center solutions where our server, storage, and switching products live, and where the focus of today's solution comes from. All of these technologies serve key verticals, such as large enterprise, retail, higher education, manufacturing, K-12, and media and entertainment, which you can see kind of strung across the top down in the gray bar. The breadth of these solution sets is a direct result of the size of our research and development organization, the investment the company has and continues to make here, and of course the innovation that gets driven by these investments. So I believe it's time for the first polling question. And I'm going to pass it back to Nick, and take it away, Nick.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. That's great. So what we're going to do, I know many of you have some familiarity with the Zadara solution, but if you do, that's going to help with this polling question, because the first question is, why are you considering storage as a service? And this is one where you can choose multiple answers, but there's a lot of benefits to storage as a service, so we're trying to figure out, is it you're trying to move more to an OpEx model versus the traditional CapEx model? Is it because you really appreciate the scalability? Is it the ease of deployment? Is it reducing your management costs or other? So go ahead and we'll give you a minute to vote. Just want to remind everyone, please keep your questions coming. We've already received a couple, which is great. So just keep the questions coming in the Q&A panel, and that will help us really understand the way to drive this presentation and things that we can answer in the end. So we'll go ahead and give everyone just another few seconds to vote. If you haven't done so already, please participate in the polls. It makes it a lot more fun. And I'll share the results here just in a second. All right, let's close it out. We'll go ahead and share it. And as you can see, the number one reason why people are considering storage as a service is for scalability. Over half of you are looking at that. Reduced management costs is another one. Ease of deployment and moving more to the OpEx models. So probably no big surprises there, but I think that'll help both Mike and Noam as we go through this. So with that, Mike, I'm going to go ahead and send it back over to you.
Great, thanks, Nick. So let's take a moment here to get everyone familiar with the Huawei server product line's history and development. The server product line was essentially born in 2002. The first generation Blade server was released in 2003, the second in 2004, and right up the line. But as you can see, last year in 2013 was really a banner year for us. We released such tremendous products as the E9000 conversion Blade server. So watch out, Cisco UCS. A fourth generation PCIe SSD card for application acceleration. High density 4BP Blade servers. A full series of version 2 rack and Blade servers as well. So as you can see, as the product has matured over time, Logger and some very significant companies have put critical pieces of their business and infrastructure on these platforms. I'll use a couple as an example. If you look at the 2009 timeframe, two of our largest customers, Alibaba and Tencent, are heavily using these products. In fact, Alibaba, if you take the combined traffic of eBay and Amazon.com in a single day, that's the amount of traffic that actually goes through Alibaba's website. So it's a very robust, high-performing environment, and they've been very happy with the production there. As far as Tencent goes, they've actually got over 20,000 of our PCIe SSD cards installed today, and they're reaping the benefits of of that application acceleration ability there. So taking a look at the Huawei server portfolio, what you notice is that we have all the angles covered here. Many different flavors and densities of rack servers to handle just about any type of compute needs you may have. So you've got 1U, 2U servers, many different heights and densities. And you'll see one that circle there, the T3500. That's actually going to be the server that we discuss as part of the Zadara solution in a few minutes. There's also the extensive Blade server lineup featuring that E9000 converged infrastructure Blade server that I just mentioned. And on top of the Blade servers, we have a whole line of multi-node servers, again, full width, half width, you name it, and the acceleration ES3000 PCIe card for application acceleration. And finally, we've got solution sets and reference architectures based on these server products designed for some of the most popular applications out there, like virtualization, email, database, web analytics, etc. And you can, again, see those across the top bar there in the solution pane. So Huawei has 5 server R&D centers with approximately 3,000 engineers. spread across these centers, just to illustrate the manpower and the mind power that the company dedicates to the product line. It's very impressive. So, of course, in the IT industry, as large a company as Huawei may be, we all need key partnerships. No company can actually go it alone, so we use these key partnerships and collaboration with other vendors to be able to give customers the best-of-breed solutions. So shown here are just some of Huawei's key partners in spaces such as OS, where we partner with all the big boys, Microsoft, VMware, the Linux OS providers, SQL Server and Oracle in the database space, of course Zadara in the application space, and of course solution providers such as EMC and IBM, and suppliers that give us, partner with us on all the hardware pieces. So it would be remiss of me not to take a moment to highlight our enormous enterprise IP product portfolio. As you can see, the portfolio has a very wide range of products in the transmission and wireless space, such as Wi-Fi access points and routers, and WDM equipment for the core, a whole family of switches to address just about every switching need you could possibly have, and of course, many different routing and security products. You'll notice that certain products have been circled, and there are actually the hardware infrastructure pieces that go along with the Zadara VPSA solution we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes as well. And actually, this is the reference architecture of the solution, which, as you can see, is a bunch of clustered T3500 storage servers with the VPSA code on them to allow us to virtualize all that storage in those frames. We've got Huawei 5700 gigabit switches behind the Huawei USG 2000 firewall to go out to the internet to give us security. And then on the back end, we've got the Huawei 6700 series 10 gig switches to go out to the cloud. So at a very high level, that's the solution. And Noam is going to get much more into this as we go along. But at this point, I think it's time for polling question number 2. So back to you again, Nick.
Excellent. Yep, thanks, Mike. Excellent. Okay, well, at this point, what we want to find out is a little bit about what off-premise environments you're currently using. And again, you can check multiple answers here. Are you currently using AWS? Are you using Windows Azure? Some other cloud offering in the marketplace? Are you using a co-location facility? Or do you have no off-premise environment currently? So go ahead and feel free to vote on that, which will be fantastic. And then just coming out of this poll, we are going to be turning it over to Noam from Zadara, which will be a great fun time to listen to the expert about Zadara's solution. So we'll give you just another couple seconds to vote, and then we'll share the results. All right, let's go ahead and show the results. And as you can see, another cloud offering is almost close to 38% of you there. There's still a decent percentage using Amazon Web Services and just kind of a mix of other solutions. One interesting one is that about a third of you aren't using any kind of off-premise environment at all currently, which is probably going to change here in the near future, but just more interesting information. So at this time, what I would like to do is I'm going to turn control of the machine over to Noam Shendar from Zadara, and he's going to go ahead and take us through the bulk of the rest of the presentation. Noam is the VP of Business Development at Zadara, and so we're going to go ahead and turn it over to him. So Noam, you can go ahead and share your screen when you're ready, and we'll let you take it away. And yeah, we can see your screen.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nick. Hi, everybody. I'm Noam Shendar. I'm the Vice President of Business Development with Zadara Storage, and it's great to have you all on the call today, and I really appreciate Huawei's efforts in putting this together and inviting you all to join. Let me jump right into it, and let me tell you a little bit more about Zadara Storage and how we work so well with our friends and partners at Huawei. As mentioned before, our service is something that we've been selling and deploying with Huawei, both on the technical side and on the business side, for over 2 years. And what it is it's enterprise storage as a service. Well, what does that mean? Enterprise storage, you probably know, it's storage that is designed to run business applications. It provides the first 3 items on the slide: control, performance, and security. You can design it to run exactly what you need it to run. It does so reliably and with sufficient performance, and it does so privately and securely. What enterprise storage until now has been rigid. It's a hardware-based device that you buy and own for a long time, and doesn't have the elasticity and the flexibility that we're used to from a cloud perspective. And as more and more of you use cloud, and we just saw in the poll that many of you do, the expectation becomes more and more commonplace to get all of those things that we have always gotten, but get those with the flexibility and agility of cloud. And that is exactly what Zadara Storage does with Huawei. All the control, performance, and security that we have all been accustomed to over the years and decades, but also with all of the flexibility of cloud storage. And this took a new kind of architecture that we call Cloud Fabric that we built from the ground up for cloud environments and storage as a service everywhere. To calibrate you a little bit on storage types in the cloud, and these are all things you most likely know, but I think it's useful to revisit them because it's something that we hear very frequently from our customers. In the cloud, the most common type of storage is object storage, by far. Very famously, there's Amazon's S3 service. From Rackspace and OpenStack, there's Swift, and so on and so forth. And object storage is very, very easy to use. In fact, S3 stands for Simple Storage Service. And what it allows you to do is put files into it and download those files back out using HTTP as your protocol, which means it's the same protocol that browsers use, which also means that files can be accessed directly by browsers. So as you can imagine, this is very good for web service and for web-based assets, but it has also some very big catches. Because the service only supports uploads and downloads of files, they're called puts and gets respectively, means you can't change the files. So it's really only good for static content. Now, there is a lot of static content out there, and that's why object storage is as popular as it is. But if you look at enterprise applications, they're very, very rarely static. If you look at databases, they keep writing new data into the databases. If you look at document sharing and collaboration, they're all about introducing changes into files. And with object, you're forced to upload the entire file every time you make any change to it, no matter how small. And of course, in addition, the protocol, HTTP, as a file transfer protocol, is not supported by any existing enterprise packages, be they from Microsoft or Oracle or elsewhere. So we, as Zadara Storage, focus on the existing file protocols for file and block, which you see in the bottom and middle of this slide, and not an object. And file is the most common type of enterprise storage protocol. In fact, 80% of capacity in the enterprise is file-based. And file-based is used for things like collaboration, document management, file sharing, and so on and so forth. And block is used typically for databases, and there are also a number of specialized applications that use block. Block is more difficult to use, but it also tends to have much lower latency and higher performance for applications that are designed for that. So again, cloud today is very object-centric, and what we do is add enterprise-grade file and block storage to the cloud. So let's talk about Huawei Zadara Storage as a Service and what it means to deploy it everywhere, cloud and outside the cloud. So I'll be painting a few scenarios here, which are actual deployed scenarios today, to make this more real and specific. So one way that we deploy this is in public clouds, including Amazon Web Services, but also elsewhere. And the way that we do this is we take Huawei hardware, Huawei servers, Huawei switches, firewalls, and we populate a rack at a colocation facility that is adjacent to the cloud that we are serving. So in this real-world example, we're serving a specific Amazon Web Services region, and we go into an Equinix colocation facility. For those of you who haven't run into Equinix, they're the world's largest colocation facility, which means they're a real estate company that has buildings that are designed to house hardware. Their buildings they're highly secure, they have a lot of power and a lot of space, of course, and cooling. So we place this equipment at Equinix. We install the Zadara software, which we call the Zadara Storage Cloud, on those servers, and we connect to Amazon using something called Direct Connect. Direct Connect is a service that Amazon provides to those companies who wish to connect private hardware directly to the Amazon cloud. It's a very fast, very low latency dedicated link. We have around the world 140 gigabits of dedicated bandwidth between us and Amazon. And because this link is dedicated, fast, and short, the latency is minimal. It's about 1 millisecond of latency between the Amazon compute and Zadara. And what this enables for customers is enterprise storage as a service. What does that mean? That means the ability to create custom configured SAN and NAS, so block and file storage, instantly. It takes only 90 seconds, and automatically attach that storage to their compute at Amazon, and therefore serve high-grade, performant, reliable, fully featured enterprise storage by the hour to those EC2 machines, and of course at very affordable prices. So I'll come to this point again later, but I want to plant the thought in your minds that this is the best of all worlds. It has all the capabilities and reliability of enterprise storage, but all the flexibility of cloud storage. You get to use flexible virtual machines from Amazon with flexible block and file storage from Zadara and Huawei. So that's one scenario. That's the public cloud scenario. Second scenario is the colocation scenario. So I already mentioned that the way that we get this done with public cloud providers like Amazon and others, Dimension Data, Cloud Sigma, and so on and so forth, across four continents around the world, is by placing the equipment and the software in a colocation facility. Well, as long as we're in a colocation facility, we can also serve other tenants of the same facility. A typical Equinix facility has somewhere on the order of 500 tenants. We are one of those tenants, and we're able to serve other tenants through something called a cross-connect, which is simply a dedicated fiber that is strung between our rack and the customer's rack. And one of our collaborations with Huawei is at a specific colocation site in Los Angeles with a colocation company called CoreSite. This site is in downtown LA, and it's in a highly connected building that has called 1 Wilshire. That's the address of the building and the name of the building. And that building has fiber going out to many of the famous media and entertainment companies that reside in the Los Angeles and Hollywood areas. And because what we provide is high performance, highly reliable storage that is elastic, which means it can grow and shrink on demand, it tends to be of particular interest to companies that are project-based and whose projects take up a lot of space. And movies is absolutely a classic example of that. Movie production requires a growing amount of capacity as the project progresses, and then that requirement goes down to zero at the end of the project. And we do that really well. The customer can provision just as much storage as they need for that particular moment in time, and over time they can grow and shrink that amount as needed, and at the end of the project they can delete it all and stop paying. So again, this is the second model. This is the colocation model, and a real-world example of that is our media and entertainment cloud that we jointly operate in Los Angeles for the benefit of are the same with the first and second models. And the third model is the private cloud model. There are some customers who love this concept, but either choose to or are not allowed to store their data outside their private data center. And we are happy to serve those customers as well. So for those customers, we deliver, again, the same stack with the Huawei hardware and our software into the private data centers, and where we stay true to our enterprise storage as a service mission, we don't sell the storage to the customers and we don't sell the hardware. We continue to own and operate and manage the hardware, and what this turns into, therefore, is a private managed cloud on the customer's premises, and the customer still gets the experience of cloud. They pay for this on a pure OpEx basis. They get flexible pricing, and they don't have to worry about managing, maintaining, and operating this cloud. To them, it's just like cloud storage, but it's as secure as can be because it's inside their private facility. So those are the three models that exist today, and there are real-world examples of the private data center model to the private cloud model, and we will be announcing some of these over time as those customers are ready to disclose our involvement publicly. So to summarize, you can find our virtual private storage arrays, or VPSAs, at service providers like Amazon, Cloud Sigma, Dimension Data, Serenitas, Vivavo, and more to come, at colocation providers like Equinix, CoreSite, KVH, which is in Japan, Aircom, which is in Ireland, and on-premise, all fully managed, purely as a service, and flexibly and affordably priced. This is the global footprint of the public cloud and colo installations, 10 locations around the world in 4 continents, 5 North American locations, 2 European locations, 2 Asian locations, and 1 Australian location. And this footprint grows all the time as well. All right. Since I've been talking for a while, it's time for you to speak up, and we have our third poll question for you.
Excellent. Thanks, Noam. That was a great intro to Zadara. So this question is really just trying to get a feel for your time frame for deploying something like what Noam's talking about. You know, what's your time frame on storage as a service? Are you already doing this stuff? Do you see yourself doing it within the next 6 months? Is it more within the next year, within the next couple of years, or do you see it as something way out there in the future? So this is just really trying to give us a sense of how soon you think you might be adopting something like this, or whether you already have. So we'll give you a few seconds to vote here, and then we'll show you the results as always. And Noam has a few more slides where he's going to talk a little bit more about the solution as well. And then we are still getting questions, so just one more shout out for those of you that have questions. Please keep them coming. We'll address all those at the end, and it just helps make it more interactive when you have some great questions that the presenters can answer. So with that, I'll go ahead and share the results. So what you can see is that there's a few of you who already have deployed this, and a few more who are going to be doing it within the next 6 months. But the bulk, well over close to kind of 2/3, or somewhere within the next couple of years, they're going to be deploying something like this. And then, you know, another group is even more than 2 years out. But that definitely resonates, and hopefully helps Noam get a feel for kind of your time frame, and helps him tailor the presentation the rest of the way through. So with that, we'll transfer it back to you, Noam.
Thank you very much, Nick. Very interesting. One thing that we hope to achieve with this service is to pull in those schedules. And we see this with our existing customer set, that because the service is very easily provisioned very quickly, and because there's no long-term commitment, in the cloud and colo facilities, the commitment is only 1 hour, customers are much more willing to experiment. And they're able to do this very affordably because the price is affordable, but also, of course, we enable free trials for a limited amount of time to help customers make a decision with no risk to them. And we're absolutely seeing these schedules accelerate among those customers. Most famously, we announced a customer last week called Farm Intelligence. Their they are flying aerial scouts. These are remote-controlled airplanes that take pictures and measurements of farm fields for the benefit of farmers, tells them about moisture in the soil, nitrogen content, and so forth. And they weren't sure that they could do this in the cloud, although they wanted to. And we convinced them in 7 days to move their production workload to the cloud, in this case Amazon Web Services, and use us as their storage solution. So when I say we can accelerate things, I mean that sometimes in extreme sort of acceleration, thinking about cloud in the abstract, and then in 1 week turning that into a real production project. All right, so let's talk a little more about the virtual private storage array. In order to provision it, there's a very straightforward interface that you would use, which, by the way, anybody can immediately log on to today. So if you go to zadarastorage.com, register. There's no need for credit card. We don't ask for that. Just verify your email address. You get access to this portal, which exposes all of our pricing and options as they are today. And of course, we keep adding more services over time. And we're up to 9 service providers so far. So speaking of service providers, that's the first choice you make on this portal. You select the provider where you need the storage to be, because we need to know where to provision your storage so that it is close to that cloud that you're using, and therefore within a very short millisecond distance from the compute. The second choice to make, if that cloud has multiple regions that we have enabled, then you need to specify which region. For example, in Amazon, we're in 5 regions: the Western U.S., the Eastern U.S., Europe, Japan, and Australia. So you would pull down the select region, pull down and select one of those 5 locations. The next choice to make is what we call the Zadara engine. You can think of this as the size of the controller, the storage controller that you use, and that affects your peak performance. A larger engine provides a higher peak performance. You can change your engine over time, so none of these selections constitute a commitment on your part. You're able to smoothly, non-disruptively, and quickly change the engine up or down based on your needs. The last choice to make is the type and quantities of drives that you want. You can have any mix of SSDs, large SATA drives, and high RPM SAS drives. Also, this mix you can change over time. And you can also add drives, and you can also remove drives. There's also a checkbox below the drives where you select the Enterprise Suite. The Enterprise Suite is a collection of 3 features. One is snapshots. The second is remote replication of the data. And the third and last one is encryption of the data at rest. So if you need any one or any number of these features, you need to select the Enterprise Suite. You can see all the pricing are up front. The price calculator on the right instantly updates every time you make a selection. And then you hit the Submit button, and from that point, up to no more than 90 seconds elapse, and your VPSA is ready. Once your VPSA is ready, you get this fully featured management interface, which shows you your drives. And these are really your drives. These are physical spindles and or SSDs. They're dedicated to you. Nobody else has access to them. And we even show you their make, model, and their serial number so that you really know what you have. From the moment that you have your drives, you can create RAID groups from those drives. I'm walking down the left side of this screen. You have pools that you can create, which pools and volumes. You carve volumes out of your pools. The volumes are thinly provisioned volumes, which means that they can actually be larger than the capacity that you have, and that allows you to not have to change volume sizes later on as your capacity grows. Those volumes could be block or file volumes. You can make your choice on a volume-by-volume basis. The block files are exposed using the iSCSI protocol, and the file volumes are exposed via NFS and CIFS or SMB protocols. We support SMB version 3, and we support NFS version 4. The servers is where you define your hosts. These are the VMs or physical servers to which you wish to expose the storage. And last are the controllers. These are the Zadara engines that I mentioned before. You always have two, so you always have redundancy. If there's any issue with any controller, there's an automatic, seamless, and non-disruptive failover that takes place. You can even trigger the failover yourself if you want to test what would happen to your application in the event of a failover. And the controller screen also shows you some parameters about your controllers, like its IP address, like its performance, like its memory utilization, and so forth. You can see below the Resources tab the data protection. So the product provides you instant snapshots and clones, both of which are instant and non-disruptive to your application, and they're zero capacity, which means that when you create the first snapshot, it doesn't take up any space. Any snapshot after that only takes up as much space as the changes that you've made since the previous snapshot. The clones are zero capacity as long as you only read from them, and then any writes that you perform to those clones, of course, get stored, so the space of each clone is only a function of the writes and that you perform on it. We have remote replication, which ships the snapshots to any remote VPSA anywhere in the world. Of course, it has to be your VPSA that you own and have permissions to access. And those remote snapshots can also be cloned at any time, which means that there's a very easy disaster recovery strategy here, where you can have a remote copy of everything that you do locally, and in the event that there's a local disaster, you can spin up your virtual machines at the remote site in a matter of minutes and be up and running again. The snapshots can be taken as often as once per minute, so that could be your recovery point objective, RPO. Access control refers to NAS functions, so this is how you integrate with users, user groups, and Active Directory in order to control access to the file shares. And then here at the bottom is really how you can interact with us. You can get a detailed event log of what the product is doing. Everything is designed for transparency, so you can see exactly what is happening inside the product. We have discussion forums where you can either ask questions or provide suggestions. Your support tickets you can generate and track right in the application, and you can also connect with us via LinkedIn in this manner. In addition to all of this, of course, there's support available via phone 24/7, included in the price, by the way. Another we think very useful and unique feature. We want to support you, so we don't charge you extra for it, and we include the full measure of support in the price. Under the hood, in case you're curious, what takes place is that in this example there are 4 Huawei servers, and they have a large number of drives attached to them. We specifically use a 36 drive form factor from Huawei, and we run an operating system on it, and then we run virtual machines on top of that operating system. And what you can see here is that there are 2 types of virtual machines, VCs, which stands for virtual controller, and CCs, which is the cloud controller. I'll begin with the cloud controller. The cloud controller is the orchestration layer. When you make a request for a new VPSA, it's the CC that receives your request and then dispatches it accordingly. And there are 2 CCs simply for high availability. The CCs are idle most of the time because their only job is to accept requests when they happen, and the requests are not that frequent. You generally make one request when you
Hey, Noam, you're cutting out there, and we're not able to hear you right now.
Okay, how about now?
Yep, there you go. It's done it just a couple times for like 2 seconds, but that time it went away for a little longer, so don't know. Anyways, keep going.
All right, I'm on a landline phone, so not much I can do except I can repeat things if you tell me that I'm cutting out. All right, so yeah, I was talking about the cloud controllers, idle most of the time. and all they do is receive requests from the portal that I showed you 2 screens ago and dispatches those requests to the system. The VCs are the virtual controllers, and these are the Zadara engines that I mentioned. Again, you get 2 of them when you make the order. You can see that the VCs per customer are always on separate servers, so that if there's any issue with one server, there's always another server to handle the workload and requests. The VCs have assigned to them the drives that you, the customer, selected. So you can see in this colorful chart, the red VCs have 8 drives assigned to them from among the 4 servers. The purple ones have 3 drives, and the yellow ones also have 3 drives. Actually, sorry, the yellow ones have 4 drives assigned to them. You can see that the drives are distributed among multiple servers. That's by design. That provides both an even distribution of the data and resilience against failures of nodes. In fact, the system contains no single point of failure, and any failure in a node, be it total or partial, will not cause any loss of access to the data. And that is one of the very nice design points of the product. Also, the VCs can grow and shrink, which I mentioned, and this is where the gray boxes come into play. For example, let's say I wanted to double the size of my red VC. What I would do is I would launch a double size red VC, let's say on a 3rd server, and then I would fail over from the standard size VC to the double size VC, again, seamlessly, non-disruptively. All of this is handled by the CC that I mentioned. So when you make a request to upgrade the engine, the CC receives it, the CC launches the new larger VC, and then performs the failover from the small to the large. What this achieves also is complete separation among the customers, because the disks aren't shared. Each customer is shared out of private virtual machines, and those virtual machines have dedicated compute and memory that is not oversubscribed, which means that there's not only is there isolation of access among the customers, there's also isolation of performance among the customers. There is nothing that one customer can do in order to slow down another customer, and that is a big, big consideration for our customers and often a selection criteria for them. These servers, and there could be many, the minimum is 2 and the maximum is, there is no architectural maximum, but practically speaking, it's in the many hundreds to few thousands, are connected via a Huawei 10 gigabit redundant switches, and those provide both the access between the storage and the customers, and also what we call the back end or private network, which is how we connect the disks to the virtual controllers. Because as you can see, the disks are not always in the same box as the virtual controller. I mentioned the disaster recovery scenario. So a real-world example, we have customers who use 2 VPSAs in a bi-coastal fashion. They have one at one of our West Coast facilities, and you saw we have 2. We have one in LA and one in the San Francisco Bay Area, Silicon Valley, and then we have 2 sites on the East Coast in the Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. area, and we have customers who replicate in one direction or the other, and in some cases even in both directions. And one very, very nice feature that we have that our customers love and helps them sleep well at night is not only is there ability to fail over from one site to a remote site, but there's also the ability to fail back. So you can imagine that a disaster occurs which requires a failover to the remote site. Well, at some point the disaster is over and you wish to return things back to normal. And the helpful feature that we provide is the ability to synchronize the changes that have happened since the disaster, since the failover, back to the primary site so that you can resume operations in a normal manner in the local site. I'd like to briefly talk about some use cases, and these will be, again, real-world use cases, actual customers, and after that summarize, and I would love to then field questions. So one example is media production. I already mentioned that we have a whole cloud dedicated for media production, and really the 2 things that attract media customers to the solution are the elasticity, so the ability to grow the capacity as needed and then shrink it or even delete it completely at the end. And the other is the separation among projects. So there are two nightmares when it comes to media production. One is running out of space when you need it most. The other is so many projects running in parallel that they slow each other down. For example, for rendering purposes, and often rendering is the last step before the project is finalized, and if the rendering is slow and is slowed down by the storage, then the deadline can slip. And one example of a customer here is Commercial, which is a company that is in the business of storing and serving out media assets for commercials. And as you can guess from the name, they focus on the auto industry for that. The next one is a category that is referred to sometimes as the geospatial information system space. So this is where maps and aerial imagery comes in. I already mentioned the one customer, Farm Intelligence, that flies these remote-controlled planes. Another example is Swiss Topo. That's the short for the Swiss Federal Bureau of Topography. They, as the name implies, serve out the detailed topographical maps for the country of Switzerland. And that takes up a lot of space. But what's interesting about this use case is that it tends to have very sparse access. In other words, it's a lot of data. The data has to be accessed instantly, but not all of it. So the performance requirement isn't very high because at any point in time, only part of the map or image set is being accessed, and a very, very small minority at that. So we call that a repository. It's an active repository because the data is always accessible, but it doesn't require a lot of streaming performance. So this is also a very common use case for us, and the fact that we can provide a lot of capacity affordably, and it's particularly affordable when we use large SATA-based drives, then the solution is, the result of that is a very large storage solution, very elastic, can grow over time. The Farm Intelligence solution requires a growth of 10 terabytes every single week, and that's easily done with us. And these drives provide sufficient performance very, very affordably, which means you're not paying for performance that you don't need. All right. Education. Education is an area that has some overlap with media and entertainment. For example, there are a lot of temporary projects. They could be semester-long projects, or they could be grant-based projects that are a year or two long, but they're still projects, and they still have an end, at the end of which a lot of raw data needs to be deleted. And I mentioned we're very good at that. Another consideration for education companies, be they universities, schools, or service providers to education, or even large companies that have internal universities, is privacy. There's a lot of private data in there, student personally identifying information, grades, transcripts, social security numbers, and the fact that we provide encryption of data at rest is a big factor in the decision there. And we have an interesting twist there. The encryption of data at rest is done with an encryption-decryption key that is entrusted to the customer. We don't keep a copy of it. Huawei doesn't have a copy of it. Amazon doesn't have a copy of it. Only the end customer does, which means that none of us have the ability to access the data for any reason. And that provides the customer a lot of trust. It also puts a big responsibility in the hands of the customer, which is never to lose the key. Should they lose the key, they have no way of accessing the data, and we have no way of getting access to the data for them or restoring their access. So the data becomes inaccessible and irretrievable in the event of key loss, and we explain this to our customers up front in many different ways to ensure that we all understand each other. And we have a number of universities as customers. One example here is the London School of Business and Finance. Software as a service is potentially our biggest use case among all use cases. And you can think of SaaS as something that needs to be able to grow exponentially very quickly and smoothly because it's very easy to procure, and customers can come in and come out as they need, and they may all come in at the same time. And we provide this with the ability to grow the capacity elastically and to grow the performance elastically by growing the engines, this is exactly what software as a service companies need. And an example here is Deloitte, which is using us for a business intelligence software as a service product that they have, which provides them exactly, our storage provides them exactly the smooth elasticity. It also provides total customer privacy. They need the ability to tell their customers that their financial data is private and protected, and between the separation among customers and the encryption, they're able to make that promise with no hesitation. And the last category is a catch-all. It's not a customer segment, but it is something that we see quite often. There are customers who have made the leap to the cloud and are unhappy with the performance or the consistency or the feature set or the control, and we fix all of that for them. So we're a solution to many generic problems in the cloud, and it's really for a very simple reason. If you look at cloud architectures today, there's very good compute and there's very good networking, but the storage is very basic. It could be that it's object storage, and it could be that in some places there's block storage that's very, very basic. And we come in and provide storage that is as good as the compute and the networking, and that balances out the solution in order into a complete IT service offering. Good compute, good networking, and good storage all together, which means that the result is something that you can run your important applications on. In summary, and I promised I would mention this theme again, the best of both worlds. We used to live in a world where we could choose either the environment that we exactly need on-premise that does everything that we needed to do, or we could choose flexibility, but we would give up capabilities, we would give up performance, consistency, and in some cases privacy. And we at Zadara and with Huawei realize that it doesn't have to be that way. We can really have all of the above in one service. So we can have consistent performance, we can have configurability, reliability, and security without giving up the economics of the cloud, which means the affordability of a shared infrastructure, with flexibility, with a focus on providing this as a pure as-a-service, pure OpEx model, and providing self-service, which means really instant response to demands. And when you put all of that together, what you get is enterprise-class storage service. With that, I'd like to say thank you, and I'd like to put up this contact information if you need to reach us, and then I'll hand it back to Nick to field questions.
No, fantastic, and we do have lots of questions, so I'll start firing them off at you. The first one is, looking at the poll results, it doesn't seem like a lot of people have adopted storage as a service yet, but given all the benefits you've talked about, the security, scalability, the ease of deployment, the affordability, OpEx model, et cetera, what do you think is inhibiting more people from jumping on this bandwagon?
Great question. It is absolutely true that if you compare the size of the cloud-based business in general, not just storage, but everything, compute and networking and storage, to the size of IT in general, IT is still, traditional IT is much, much bigger than cloud. And we think that the lack of storage that measured up to the needs of customers was one of the biggest inhibitors of that. And our biggest challenge is creating awareness for this solution, because when customers find out about this, they can't believe their eyes. They didn't realize that you could have it all. You could have the storage that is as good as what you're used to on-premise, which still has all the flexibility of cloud and even is available within clouds. And our growth is a testament to that. We are growing exponentially and have been for the past 2 years now, and are generating literally millions of dollars of revenue off of this solution. And the more people find out about this, the more demand we see. So I think the problem is largely solved, and now it's a matter of time of getting the word out there and having customers try this, and those who like it are able to jump on as soon as they're ready.
Excellent. Okay, that's great. Mike, I think this one could be for you. The question is, can you, I think you might have mentioned this, but can you remind us the model of Huawei server and also the networking products from Huawei that are at the heart of the infrastructure with this VPSA solution?
Sure, Nick. So the server piece is called the T3500. It's an OEM product, and it provides. We feel that it provides the perfect blend of density in terms of the 36 drive bays give us a lot of storage in a small footprint, so we can stack these a number of these in rack and really save you some power and cooling costs in a data center environment. Gives you a lot of compute power. You can load it up with memory, so it gives you a lot of horsepower from the core. And the other components are the USG 2000 firewall for security as we come into the solution, the S5700 gigabit E switches on the front end, and the S6700 10 gig E switches that go to the backbone of the solution and or out to the cloud.
Excellent. Okay, that's great. Noam, I think this one's for you. The question is, can you confirm that the Zadara private cloud is physically in the data center and not a hardened connection to a data center located storage somewhere else?
Yes, confirmed. We deliver this to the customer's own private premise, and we require an external connection to remotely manage it, but that connection can be outside the customer's firewall. In other words, we don't gain access to anything inside the customer's premise from a network perspective, but the actual physical infrastructure lives inside the customer's private premise.
Great. And another one from the same gentleman is, do you have any use cases in the healthcare and pharmacy space?
Yes. Pharma, no. Healthcare, yes. We have customers who use us to store medical records. In other words, these are HIPAA-regulated customers, and they have determined that our storage is sufficiently dedicated to qualify as dedicated storage. They, of course, use the encryption feature. And in one case, and by the way, in all cases, we sign an agent agreement. And then in one case, the customer actually contracted with us to deliver failed drives to them so that they can physically destroy the drives. That's a requirement from one of their providers.
Excellent. And I do want to be mindful of time. I apologize if we didn't get to your question because there were a lot and we appreciate it. But the final question is, how big can this get? Can you talk a little bit about the scalability of this solution?
A great question, and it's a good prompt since I did not mention this. This grows to well beyond 100 petabytes under single management and can grow beyond that. That's our testing limit so far. Again, no architectural limit that prevents us from getting to an exabyte and beyond. But at the testing today, well over, I think that we tested up to 128 petabytes, and this grows over time, both as drives get bigger and as we up our testing limit.
Excellent. Well, it is already 1 minute after the hour, so apologies if we didn't get to your question. We will follow up with you individually if we didn't get a chance to answer it. But on behalf of both Noam and Mike, I want to thank everyone for taking time today, and hopefully you found this informative. We will have a recorded version on the Huawei website within the next 24 hours. So thank you again for your time, and thank you, gentlemen, for an excellent presentation.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.